Great defeaters, new and old, welcome back to another episode of The Breakdown with your host, BaseDaKID, Tony, the pugilist boy. We are children of the game. Tony, how's your weekend been?
Yeah, it was busy, with a decent amount of boxing, and it was about bonfire night, so the family was together. So it was a nice weekend. I enjoyed it. I'm a bit tired now, though. Must be honest. Night, so the family was together. So
You getting enough? Oh, okay.
that was
Yeah,
me.
no, I hear you. So I guess look, guys. First of all, say thank you everyone who's tuning in, who's already in the building. So what we're gonna do is the quick roll call, and we will get into it. We're gonna try and keep it all brief today. So yeah, we're not gonna have you here till like 9:30, 10 o'clock. That's that's not happening tonight. Um, First of all, shout outs to Untraceable. Shout out to J Lanks, Fight Fan TV, Danny, Big Ups, Declan, Uncle Jonah, It's Nafstar, a new one for the breakdown. Big ups, Nawinda Singh, bless up to you, and Osborne. With Untraceable, with regards to your comment at the top, all I'll say is you don't have to be convinced. As I said, it's not a case of if it's your last £10, but if you've got £10 spare, it's a worthwhile investment. There's more than enough stuff out there if you want to do the research just to realize, like style wise, that's a horrible matchup. That's all I'm saying. Um, but yeah, Tony, where do you want to start?
Okay, so this time last week, we were talking about a fight very briefly that had happened earlier in the day. So we'll go right back to last week, Tuesday, fighting out of Japan on the zone was a unification matchup between Kyoguchi and Teraji. I have some highlight if you want to jump in and give us your rundown on how this fight went.
Yeah. So with regards to this particular fight, first things first, I think a lot of people were high on Hiroto Kyoguchi, the Mad Boy as he's called. A lot of people weren't sure if Kenshiro Teraji still kind of had it in him, especially with the one little stumble that he had in losing his belt. But just like Lennox Lewis lost by knockout, came back and avenged that knockout loss with a knockout victory of the same person in, I believe it was 3 rounds. So um the one thing that Kenshiro Teraji did within this whole fight, which was basically perfect, he kept distance better than probably anyone I've seen at anything below 147 pounds. He had he stuck behind a very very sharp jab, which was almost like a ramrod jab. Every single one was meaningful, had purpose on it. Was a ramrod. Everything offset and unbalanced Kyoguchi. So even though he tried to come in through a tight guard and a crouch, every time he came and he wanted to throw, he was just offset by the jab. The jab was everything. It opened up his guard. It allowed Kyoguchi even to raid the inside with sweeping, almost bolo-like uppercut shots to the body of Kyoguchi. All of this stuff just basically slowed Kyoguchi down, was slowly busting him up round after round. In and out, he just couldn't get close enough. He looked a bit stiff in the first couple rounds, but he didn't have the answers. Taraji just overpowered him throughout the entire fight. Pretty much dominant, minus 35, 40 seconds in round number 5, I believe it was, whereby he sort of had a late salvo and Taraji had to come through a mini crisis. But otherwise, it was pretty much a punch perfect masterclass in how to break down a stubborn opponent and how to finish correctly from Kenshiro Teraji, who now is the back to being the Ring Magazine #1 and the only unified light flyweight champion. So congrats to him. That's what I saw. Did you go back and watch that fight in the end?
Yeah. I did.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, look, I got to give credit because, very often guys at this weight division do not get the credit that they deserve. I was speaking to Meister actually in the week about how difficult it is for Americans to see those kind of fights. So we're kind of a little bit blessed in that we get those fights more easily. Not that it's easy, but we get them easier than our compadres in the States. But obviously, the Far Eastern market is a big market. Those guys can fight amongst each other, and they do every week. I mean, literally, as I scour BoxRec to see what fights are happening across the world, I always see a good spattering of fights in the Far East. And there's a very good market out there, and there is some huge talent there. Obviously, top of that pile is Naoya Inoue. But there are loads underneath that just are so good and are what have they got? 3 unified champions now in Japan. Yep. So that's a country that has more world champions than most, and they have a legitimate pound for pound fighter in amongst that. Teraji, as you said, I mean, there's not much more I can add to what you said. But this was really one of my first opportunities to see the kid. And I'm impressed. Great footwork, lovely assaults. It was a little mini classic in that, both fighters came out knowing that this was, a big thing. They both put on, a show of excellent offensive fighting. Both seem to rock each other at certain points in the fight. But in the end, round 7, Teraji nails it, and it's a great finish. And, it's another example when we're talking about technical ability of a fighter who shows great technical ability to finish a man off. Wobbles him, and then he finishes him off with a great salvo. So yeah, really good fight. If you haven't seen it, it is available on YouTube.
It's on the
Go
Zone
have
as
a
well.
look.
You can still watch it on the
And
Zone.
it's on the Zone,
in
yeah.
the UK at least. I think it's on ESPN Plus in America. So if there's anyone watching from America, you can check that from there. Right, there's a question from Fight Fan just with regards to that round 5. He's asked, would we say that round 5 is round of the year? To me, I would actually say yes. I haven't seen a round apart from possibly round 10 between Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. I haven't seen a more action-packed, suspenseful round than that round 5 of this weekend, in my opinion. But maybe you might have a different.
Wow, that is a great question, Danny. You know what? I think I'm going to have to plead the fifth on this one, because the reason is there has been so much quality boxing this year. And I don't want to say it is the best round, although, yes, it goes down as a great round, because I'm pretty certain I've seen 2 or 3 other fights on top of what you just mentioned, Base, where there have been some superb rounds. I mean, I'm thinking, was not one of Craig Richards against Buatsi a humdinger of a round?
They had some decent rounds, but I don't think there was any that was as emotional and intense as that round 5 was there.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, on that card, the
Yeah.
actual what's it called, Alan Babbage versus Adam Bulski was actually a lot more eventful round by round in terms of what happened. So I couldn't give Buatsi and Richards that distinction, in my opinion. But
yeah,
that's
I
me.
see what you're saying. Clarissa Shields versus Savannah Marshall. I mean, you got 10 action-packed rounds there. One of them, again.
But which round would you say had more impact than? We're talking about a round. We're not talking about a fight.
Yeah,
so that's what you have to.
I'm just thinking, it's difficult for me to find one individual round that I can go, wow, do you remember that round? But I'm pretty certain there's 1 or 2 rounds elsewhere that I've looked at, because this has been a bumper year for boxing. We have seen so much boxing, and considering that we're in November now, and I'm probably forgetting fights that I watched in January, February. I mean, obviously, Taylor Serrano sticks out like a sore thumb from early in the year, but there were some really good fights at the start of the year. Some really good unifications. Yeah, I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one.
Just to answer Hot Pies' question, we're talking about round 5 of Kenshiro Teraji versus Hiroto Kyoguchi from last Tuesday, whether that was the round of the year or not. Okay, cool. Where do you want to take it next?
So let's move on. We go to the weekend, and we start off with the earliest action. There wasn't any on Friday, was there?
None that we were watching. There was some fights on Friday, but there weren't any that.
Okay. So we start off with the Dmitry Bivol, Zurdo Ramirez card, and I will start right at the top of the bill with the Bivol Ramirez. So I will go in on this one, seeing as you went in on the last, and I will say brilliant performance from Dmitry Bivol. I'm looking at the two guys, and I'm thinking to myself, this fight looks like a little bit of a catchweight, because Zurdo Ramirez is physically so much bigger than Dmitry Bivol. However, in the fight, he uses none of his physical advantages to gain any advantage over Bivol. I mean, literally from round 1, I'm thinking to myself, you take center ring and you don't back up because you're fighting a smaller man. But no, it worked out the other way. Bivol takes the center ring, and for some reason, Ramirez is the one who's running around the outside of the ring, allowing Bivol to dominate the fight. I don't know what strategy his camp thought they would come in with. If you look now, you see Zurdo's falling short with his jabs. Nothing that he pushes onto Bivol goes hard. It's literally just tap, tap, tap on the edge of Bivol's guard. Whereas Bivol, when he goes in with thunder. And, it's interesting because I was looking at the box stats for the fight, and interestingly, CompuBox seemed to have recorded Zurdo having more power shots than Bivol, but I can't remember any of them. I literally can't remember any of them, because everything he threw seemed to hit Bivol on the arm. Yeah. And yes, he's hitting him to the body and head, but nothing's pushing his head back. Whereas when you look at it the other way around, Bivol, when he decides I'm engaging, he's rocking Ramirez's head. And this for me was just, a very easy fight for me, for Bivol. I didn't see him stepping out of third gear. I mean, I was with my my brothers and cousins watching the fight, and they were saying, when's this guy going to turn it up? Because the action seemed kind of mute. And I said, well, to be honest, Ramirez isn't bringing any action to the fight. And Bivol really, to me, didn't seem to be getting out of third gear. Occasionally he might have slipped into fourth for a combination, but really and truly throughout the whole fight, I thought he fought a very controlled fight. Again, I looked at the punch stats after the fight, and it appears that Ramirez has somehow managed to hit Bivol with more punches than anybody else has ever punched him, including Canelo. It's an interesting statistic, which shows the mastery of Bivol. But what it also tells me is I don't think he was at any point hurt in the entire fight. So he was willing to just walk Zurdo down, give him punishment, and know that what I'm receiving in return isn't going to have any impact on me. Yeah, I mean, very, very professional performance from Bivol. I'll be very interested to hear your comments further to that. But what we will talk about is where does he go next?
Right. So, I mean, with regards to that, now when you say, he hit Bivol with more power punches according to a CompuBox or whatever, that's probably correct because he very rarely threw a jab. And remember, everything other than a jab is listed as a power punch, whether it's heavy, hard, or not.
Mm,
So pretty much the one thing I kind of noticed with this fight, now I said that Bivol would basically control, dominate this fight, and would constantly turn Ramirez. But what I didn't expect was for him to literally pressure the pressure fighter and stay directly in front of him at all times. But the reason he was able to do that is because he trusted not only his footwork and his stance, but he trusted his speed to be able to raid um, Gilbert or Ramirez is be able to raid his space, get in and out before you've got a chance to react. What he's clearly done, especially even in this clip that you've just seen, is that he was able to hit Ramirez before Ramirez could set himself to throw anything. Ramirez is a person because of how sort of big and not lumbering, but because of how sort of big he is, he's a person he can't move, he can't hit on the fly. As you see there in that jab that he just tried to throw out, there was nothing towards it because he needs to set his feet before he can throw anything. Someone like Bivol doesn't need to set his feet to be able to throw a straight shot. So because of that, similar to a bit of what Alexander Usyk does, he can throw on the fly. He can throw a straight shot while moving. So when he's moving into the pocket, he's throwing the shot as he's actually closing range, which stops you from being able to set yourself to throw back. And he's not gonna stay and exchange with you. He's literally gonna throw and he's gonna move out of range when you're about to try and set yourself. So now you can't throw. You've got to now reset yourself, try and step forward to get back into range. By that time, he's hit you again, and then he's moved away again before you've got a chance to try and exchange with him. And all of that is pretty much a reason why Ramirez was just not able to try and pressure and push forward because again
mm,
he needs to set himself before he can land anything. Whereas Bivol was already hitting him on the entry in and hitting him again on the entry out when he's trying to come forward. It was just a masterful performance of range. It was a masterful performance of even the stance you use to nullify the advantages of someone who's naturally bigger than you with a longer reach. And it's just showing the elite level boxing skill that you don't necessarily have to if you want to be risk averse, you fight exactly the way that Dmitry Bivol has. He controlled so much of the fight, even the rounds that he gave up to have a breather. He didn't control, but he controlled the pace of those. He made sure that he was never put himself in any danger. Even when he backed up onto the ropes a couple of times, he would lull Ramirez to come in to try and sort of throw something, and then he would step into Ramirez's range to stop those shots from having any real torque on them, keeping his elbows tight. Then he would trade off with him just after he's thrown a shot, and again end up in, grab him, spin him, and then step off the ropes. It was just a masterful performance on how to take away someone's advantages, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's so difficult to fight someone like that because everything is an adjustment. Everything is I will fight you the way I need to fight you to win, and I don't need to have the glory of knocking you out. It's not about that. I can get satisfaction from knowing I've comprehensively beat you for 12 rounds and there was nothing you could do to change that outcome. And I think that's the kind of mentality that he goes in there with nowadays, rather than do I stay in the pocket and look for the knockout and potentially put myself in a situation where maybe that doesn't work out best for me, or I allow myself to be hit when I shouldn't need to. So yeah, overall, I think it was a masterful performance. Again, as you said, he barely got out of second gear, let alone went into third or fourth. He had a couple times that where he definitely hurt Ramirez from round one. You could see from the first round, Ramirez was hesitant to to try and sort of exchange with him or step on the inside because, yeah, clearly Bivol hits a lot harder than people would think just because he's just over 50% KO ratio at the moment. But a lot of that, I believe, is strictly just because he doesn't need to go looking for those KOs anymore. He's quite happy with doing things defensively based on what his dad said to him as an amateur. So yeah, overall, great performance, and we look to see what happens next with Dmitry Bivol.
Excellent, excellent. Fight fan Danny says books must have been cooked because Zurdo didn't win more rounds than Canelo or Craig did. Absolutely right. I mean, to me, he pitched a shutout. I personally didn't see Ramirez win a single round. So
gave
yeah, he hits him, but there's never a round where he go, you hit me more than I hit you. It never happened.
Well, technically, so in the second and the third round, he did actually land more shots than Bivol did, but a lot of them they were very like tiny. They weren't really they were scoring shots, but they weren't anything meaningful. Whereas
Yeah,
Bivol hit the meaningful shots. But
exactly.
but Bivol did take off. I think it was round 5 and round 10. He literally took those off and barely threw anything in those rounds. But every other round, he outlanded Ramirez, or he threw something at him that hurt Ramirez and had him backing up. So, um, yeah, that's what I would say. I gave Ramirez 2 rounds, and some people gave him 3. I literally said on my prediction video he wouldn't win more than 3 rounds, and every
Mm,
card was the lowest card was 117, 111. So, yeah.
yeah. So the question is, I know we don't like to talk too much about future fights, but where should he go next?
Well, I mean, realistically, he wants to go against Beterbiev. He wants undisputed at 175. Beterbiev actually wants undisputed as well, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like Bob Arum is willing to make that fight, especially when he doesn't control he'll make the fight if he controls both people, but whereas he doesn't, it doesn't look like he's that keen to work with Eddie and put his person either on the zone or have a DAZN fighter on ESPN. So but at this point, I think because Bivol has now beat both Canelo and Ramirez and had sort of two high profile victories in the US that everyone has seen, you can't now just say, oh, well, this guy is a boring fighter or he brings nothing, because he has actually a very big profile. So
Yeah,
so Bob Arum can't hide behind that anymore, or behind the, well, no one knows him, he's an unknown Russian and he's boring. Or even if he's
mm,
boring, he's very well known. So yeah, I think you might end up being pressured into that fight, but it will be interesting to see how it works out. But whoever he fights next, will, to be honest, I actually think his next fight could be against Joshua Buatsi. I wouldn't be surprised if that ends up being his next fight, while Beterbiev is taking care of Anthony Yard.
okay, so very interestingly, obviously I don't know if you saw, but Buatsi was at the fight and he did make the call to say, "Yeah, I've seen the flaws and I think I can do something." But this is an interesting story.
Hmm. I mean, with regards to that, look, they said before that Bivol could end up doing the rematch at 168 for undisputed down there, especially while Beterbiev wasn't playing ball, so to speak, or Bob Arum wasn't. Do I want to see that? I mean, personally, look, he's always said that he could make 168. He used to campaign at 160 as an amateur, even though obviously 160 is not necessarily 160. It's like 165, I think, is middleweight as an amateur. But he he said before the Canelo fight that it's actually would be very hard for him to get to 168 now, because when lockdown happened and he had the 18 months out the ring, he ended up eating more than he usually would have. Obviously, wasn't training as much, so he put on more weight. So to be able to take that extra weight off, he thinks it would be very difficult. He's not sure if he can actually get down to 168 anymore. But if he said, he would try for the biggest, for the big fight if it was intriguing enough and there was enough money on the line. So, but him saying that tells me that I don't want to see him somewhere where now he's naturally, if he can't make it, quote unquote, safely or have anything in the gas tank afterwards, is it worth doing? I don't know. But if he can do it, as hard as it might be, if he can do it and perform, and then have that opportunity to say, okay, let me try and take your belts because you tried to take mine. Do that and then come back up and then fight for undisputed again and have the 168 undisputed versus and then the 175 undisputed.
Yeah.
That would be a very, it would be a very big accomplishment. So if it's legacy and he can do it, go for it. But if he can't, then I wouldn't suggest it personally. But yeah.
As you said, I'm 100% in agreement with what you said. If he can make it safely, go for it, because that's great history making. If he can pull that one off. Maestro, welcome, brother. We see you in the chat. We saw your interviews after the fight. Not with David Morrell. I'm talking about. So yeah, if you don't already know, follow Maestro A on YouTube. Great interviews, great coverage. Skyer says Bivol needs to stop belt bullying Canelo and leave him with his 168 belts. Well, ain't Canelo been belt bullying people all his life? So shoot on the other foot.
Can you really say that the 5'7" guy is belt bullying people that are naturally 6 foot, 6'1", 6'2", 6'3"? I don't know. I feel like it's because look, the whole thing that the people can say regarding the Bivol and Canelo situation is that Bivol has always been the naturally bigger guy, from an amateur fighting at middleweight to a pro fighting at 175. He's always been naturally bigger, so Canelo never had any advantages to begin with within that scenario, apart from experience possibly. But I don't know. I mean, with regards to obviously Maestro's comment, you're right. Bivol did say, look, we'll do it at 168. But he also said after that it would be difficult for him to get down there. He ate too much during the pandemic. I've seen those interviews. So if he doesn't feel like he can do it comfortably or well enough to have something in the gas tank, then it's not worth it, unless the money's crazy, in my opinion. But
yeah. Northbound Brent asked a decent question. If Bivol and Beterbiev happens, where is it most likely to happen? Seeing as I was going to say, because seeing as Beterbiev is Muslim, I know the Saudis would definitely want a piece of his action, and that would be a big
fight. Abu Dhabi. It might even go back to Abu Dhabi, the Championship Series, because I know the Saudis aren't too keen to work with Bob Arum after because of the Tyson Fury issue, and obviously even the old Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao issue, which happened years ago. Both were failed negotiations, so I don't know how keen they are to work with Bob, but Abu Dhabi might, and Abu Dhabi will definitely work with Eddie, and so will Saudi Arabia. So it would make the most money over there, and more than likely it would get a good turnout. I don't think it will happen in America, and it definitely won't happen over here either. So yeah.
Cool. Okay, so let's move on, guys. The next fight we're going to talk about was one that I didn't catch too much. I sort of sneaked a little glimpse here and there. So this is going to be the fight before, which was Chantel Cameron versus Jessica McCaskill. So take it away, my man.
Okay, so this fight was actually very weird at the start. Now, look, everyone knows that Jessica McCaskill is not necessarily the most coordinated or easy person to watch, but she's She is all action, and she is very much a classic pressure fighter. But it just seems as if in the first round, it looked like the two of them clashed heads. And after that happened, like Jessica's, I mean, look, her footwork has never been good, but it looked even worse than normal. So there is, there is looks that potentially she was concussed, or she her equilibrium just kind of wasn't there, because she was literally all over the place. Now, the fact that Chantel Cameron just has naturally better footwork than most of the people that Jessica's ever fought, and was quicker than a lot of them, and had that in and out style. I think it probably even accentuated Jessica McCaskill's limitations and inabilities. But yeah, she looked, like I said, she looked a lot worse than I've ever seen her before. Um, and again, I don't know if that's because Chantel is just that much better, or if because that head clash that they had, which visibly had damage on both of them, it caused a swelling beside Cameron's left eye, which started puffing up from round one all the way through to the end of the fight. And it also caused you could see a big sort of almost like a Klingon forehead swelling on Jessica McCaskill, bump up from that same time. So I'm not sure. It wasn't necessarily the fight that we thought it would be, but you got to give McCaskill credit, because she stayed competitive throughout. She didn't allow Chantel Cameron to have it all her own way. Um, she actually did it quite a few times. She would dip down quite often below the waist, which is technically illegal, but she would do it thinking that Chantel Cameron would maybe stop punching. But Chantel was like, nope, you dip down there, you're gonna take these to the back of the head. And yeah, she fought very dirty as well at times with that. And I feel like that was a part of her tactic to say, well, no, you're not gonna be this nasty, like this aggressive person. I'm gonna show you, there is no reprieves here. Like if you get if you want to try and stall for time and stop the action, unless the referee tells me to stop or pulls me off, like you're gonna catch these hands anywhere they land. Which I thought was nice. And I did like that spitefulness from Chantel Cameron. There was no sportsmanship about anything that she done in this fight, nor should there have been, because I would say if the shoe was on the other foot, Jessica probably would have done the same thing. Her style is more conducive to doing that anyway. So it was definitely sort of out fighting. Again, it was like bullying the bully, out fighting the fighter, and outboxing the fighter as well. And it was a comprehensive victory. But Jessica actually did sort of take more of the later rounds, and she created more visible damage to Chantel throughout the fight. So if that head clash or whatever happened didn't take place, maybe it would have been a bit closer than it was. But yeah, Chantel Cameron did what she needed to do. It was a very clear victory. It was a competitive fight in spots, but it was nowhere near close. And yeah, that's pretty much how that one worked out.
Yeah, so as I said, I kind of watched bits and pieces of that fight, so I can't give you like the rundown. But what I did notice is the point that Fight Fan TV Live, and by the way, guys, if you don't follow Fight Fan TV Live, go follow them, because again, very good friends of us guys, and run an absolutely superb YouTube channel with some great content. Jessica McCaskill's footwork was atrocious. It was awful. I mean, I wouldn't show that to an amateur. It was in some cases, and I don't know if the head injury disorientated her to the point that she just wasn't in control of her feet. But it was bad. And Chantel Cameron just took advantage of that, because, there were times when McCaskill was literally feet side by side, and Cameron just teed off. She was like, yeah, you want to put your feet there? Brrr! There you go. Take some of that. So, yeah, from what I saw, McCaskill, throwing punches, looking completely like, I'm going to knock this girl out. And you ain't got that power. I don't think she has. She threw a lot of tippy-tappy punches and then tried to throw the big haymaker at the end of it. You know, I think talked about this technique last week where somebody else last week was throwing a lot of fast shots underneath and didn't come back with a big shot over the top. And this on this occasion, Jessica was throwing, you know, the tap jab and then throwing a big looping overhand like Dillian White does. And she was missing by a country mile because that punch, to be honest, I wouldn't teach that punch to anyone because it's so easy to see. You know, literally, it's one of the easiest punches to see. If someone rolls their whole body and then puts their arm up, and by the time their arm's straight in the air like that to bring the arm down, I'm like, rah, something's falling out of the sky. It's snowing. You know, you've got enough time to put your hand up and guard or move your head and roll, whatever. But yeah, very crude by Jessica McCaskill. A much more polished performance by Chantel Cameron. And yeah, she looked the easy winner in that fight from what I saw.
Gonna move on.
Cool. Moving on. We move to the next fight on that card that was meant to originally have been Rakimov against Joe Cordina. Ended up being Zelfa Barrett against Rakimov. A fight that I have a little clip of Zelfa knocking down Rakimov, but obviously we know that Rakimov ends up stopping Barrett, but I can't find any footage of that. So I'll let you talk this one through.
Okay, so this fight again, if you watch my prediction video, I pretty much said exactly how this would go. That Zelfa Barrett's biggest issue here would be that he's too economical. He's a pure boxer by trade, so he will sort of circle the perimeter and he will look to try and sort of hit and move. He'll hit and move. The one thing he has obviously is he does actually have power. And what he managed to do on a couple of times was manage to obviously slip shots. You would see that Rakimov was dipping down to the side, and obviously managed to set him up on several occasions for big uppercuts in several of the rounds that took place, and obviously drops him here in the third round, which was a brilliant shot. But Rakimov, even though Zelfa hurt him several times in the fight, he never discombobulated him. It was always more like a bit of a stunning shot as opposed to, like he's all over the place. And Rakimov being a more of a pressuring type guy and being a natural pressure fighter, he did the one thing that Zelfa doesn't like. And I said, if you look at it, the most comprehensive example you could look at Zelfa in a fight like that was against Kiko Martinez. Someone that's literally just coming forward, making you work every minute when you don't want to have to work, and your legs are not going to be able to carry you around like for a 12-round fight consistently. And at this point, he's doing it against someone that's not naturally smaller guy coming up in weight. So someone that's actually the same weight class as you, that's got power and knows how to distribute it. And in my video, I said, I actually, I can see it ending between rounds 8 and 10, but I'm going to respect Zelfa and actually I'm going to go for the points victory for Rakimov because I do think Zelfa will be able to that he'd be able to sort of shell up and go into survival mode. So yeah, if you want to see that, literally as I said in my video, everything I said pretty much turned out exactly as, apart from me when I said like I want to be respectful and have this as a points loss as opposed to a stoppage. But yeah, the stoppage happened. You could see just round by round, even though Zelfa had a lot of success, you could just tell unless he could keep a sustained attack and be able to keep Rakimov honest throughout the fight, then eventually he was going to get worn down or he was going to get overtaken, because you can't continuously move like that with the wide stance, engaging all of those the lower leg muscles as well as the upper leg muscles, and doing that for 12 rounds consistently with no break. You could just see when the leg started to slow down. And Rakimov primarily, he made sure to invest a lot in the body. hit the hips a lot. He sort of hit the solar plexus. He just made sure that those legs were not going to be able to carry Zelfa around consistently. And ultimately, that's basically what happened. He caught him with a shot. I believe it was a left hook over the top of Zelfa's guard, high on the top of the head, and that was where the leg started to wobble around. And people thought, oh, he's got a leg injury. Like, no, it was just the equilibrium was gone at that point, and he did well to survive for the next round and a half after that, because that took place in the start of the eighth. But respect to Zelfa, because at the end of the day, he never just sort of shielded up and just tried to survive. He said, you know what, if I'm going out, I'm going out swinging. And he even landed some good shots in those exchanges. He just didn't have enough grounding within his legs to actually properly turn over the shots. So when those exchanges were happening, even though he was having and landing some decent shots, they just didn't have the necessary oomph and torque behind them, just because the legs at that point had gone. But he's definitely got it in the locker to come again. And funnily enough, actually no, let me not do that, because again, we don't like to predict on future fights. We just like to talk about the old ones. So yeah, shout out to Zelfa. He done a great job. He couldn't sustain it, but he's definitely proved he's at that level, and he can definitely stay there. But Rakimov, just that pressure style that he's got. He started to warm up to the punches. He started to just take the punches. And once you got someone you just walks through your shots like that, it gets disheartening, and it makes you even tired, because mentally now you're checked out. And I think that's kind of what happened in the fight. So
again, pretty much agree with what you said. I do want to give credit to Zelfa, as Robert Brony says, because Zelfa came out. As you said, he is a pure boxer, and he looked like a really good. He was in a good shape through most of this fight. At least through 6-7 rounds, I thought he looked comfortable. He boxed nicely. Picked his shots. Seemed to be just managing each round to know, okay, I've got that in the bag. Tick. Next one in the bag. Tick. But as we saw, eventually, Rakimov is a really hard puncher, and he just bided his time, and then eventually came on stronger with bigger, faster punches, more combinations, and started to dig in and turn the tide of the fight. And then obviously a spectacular finish towards the end, where he knocks Zelfa down twice in round 9. But respect to Zelfa, he'll come back. This fight, of course, sets up a very good fight between Rakimov and Cordina, who will be coming to try and get his title back next year. Robert Brony says, I favour Cordina. What's your thoughts on that, Base?
you know me, I just talk about the fights that happen, not the fights that are coming up. But
All right.
what I will say is that, as he says, that is more of a favorable style match for Cordina than it is Rakimov. Maybe one day we'll talk about base styles and sort of the pros and cons of them. Maybe on a week where there's not a lot of stuff going down, we can break those down.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we just mentioned very briefly a couple of fights on the undercard. Galalia Fai coming back after a period out of the ring. He had a hard night's work. He had a very hard night's work. But credit to him. Glad to see him back.
I actually think he lost that fight, to be honest. I had him losing 7 rounds to 3. But as I say sometimes, and I can quite happily admit to being a hypocrite on certain occasions. My accumulator was on the line, so I'm happy that the fix was in.
Okay. And then Caliafy, much later, came in and was dominant. I mean, this kid, to me, and I don't know what you think, Base, but I think he's the best of the three your five brothers.
So wait, are you talking of Galal's the one? Both of them had Galal's the one I think actually lost. I think Cal won, but Cal obviously had to come through more of a crisis. So who are you referring to?
This is Gal that I'm looking at, right?
Yeah, that's Galal. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I meant Galal. I meant
Okay.
Cal had the rocky road, but Cal
Right.
is the youngest of the lot, and to me the best of the lot.
Yeah, Galal is who I was referring to. I think that Gohan Gonzalez beat him 97, 93. Cal Yafai, I actually believe he did beat Paklar just with a work rate, but he had a very sticky first 3 rounds. But I think he actually, to me, he took the second, which made it a bit more palatable when he lost the first, the third, and the fourth. And the body work, his natural body work and aggression, to me, was what managed to. He took the legs away from Paklar, and Paklar's gas tank ran empty after sort of round 4, and then sort of round 5, round 6 onwards. Cal he picked up the pace and he just did more, and it impacted the fight a lot more than Paklar did. But that fight was never supposed to be as hard as it was. So yeah, shout outs to both of them. But like I said, Cal, I had both of them on the accumulator. So when Cal got knocked down, I was thought, oh, here we go. But I did think he won, so yes. But then Galal, I thought Galal lost, but again, because he was on the accumulator, I had to be a hypocrite and say, yep, I don't mind the robbery on that occasion.
And that was a split decision, so it was a close one. Jam down 187. I know you're joking, but yeah, we need to just give you your little 2 minutes of fame. Looking for a comprehensive breakdown of Campbell, the Hit Manhattan, future Hall of Famer. Wow.
I'll tell you now, Jam Down. I've literally all I've seen is the shot, the body shot. I haven't even seen the round. I didn't see the start. I haven't seen the end, and I'm not going to. Everyone knows my opinions on Campbell Hatton, especially the fact that he's still managing to be on the biggest cards. Even though he's not at the top of them anymore, fine, but he's still on the biggest ones. That's my issue at this point. But good luck to him. At the end of the day, they're putting him in against the right level of opponent. He can look good against. So long may that continue. And if you feed him 15 or 20 people on that level and gradually step him up, then at least he'll get a chance to, improve properly as opposed to what they were doing previously. So I'm not gonna totally lambast him like I did before. But yeah, I still don't want to see him, especially on these big cards. I don't think that's right. But
cool.
Last one.
That's more than me. So the Campbell's nepotism's finest. Good funny. The next fight we will be looking at is David Morrell Jr., Cuban sensation. Came into this fight 7-0 with 6 KOs. Leaves this fight 8-0, 7 KOs.
Are you gonna pronounce the name, or do you want me to do it?
I don't mind. Bosunili.
Not bad.
Yeah, I heard it enough, so I was kind of. It's not that difficult to me.
Yeah,
so let's have a look at some of the action from that. I'll let you talk about it.
I mean, you know what? I particularly all I can really say is I've known about David Morrell Jr. for a couple of years. He's on one of those trajectories whereby he's almost on that fast track trajectory, just without a necessary like a big title behind him, similar to Galal Yafai, similar to how Vasily Lomachenko was. He's being matched tough from early, but he's showing his skills. He's got amazing footwork, he's got amazing upper body and defensive capabilities. He's got a rocket of a right hand and a left. He's got great punch variety, and he does also, even though he's never really been like hit consistently, he seems to have a pretty good chin as well, because I have seen him take one or two flush looking shots. The only thing that I don't like about David Morrell Jr. is the fact that I don't think he's being kept busy enough on PBC and Showtime. Like he's been a pro now for 4 years. I think he was turned pro at the end of 2018, and he's only had 8 fights. So as a pro in that realm, you should really be fighting at least 3 times a year in that early stage, even if you're being fast tracked. Like he's young, he's 24, he came out at the age of 21. I don't think there's any reason why you only be fighting once or maybe twice a year at such a sort of such a young age in that building phase. But
it's actually 2 times every year, twice in 19, twice in 20, twice in 21, twice in 22.
Right, there you go. So even that, to me, as someone just starting their career at such a young age, he should be a lot more active. But that's not, I can't blame him for that. That's the situation he's in. But he is definitely the goods, and I just want him to continue to elevate. Like I said, the footwork is brilliant. The upper body movement is brilliant. Like he's married that Cuban style perfectly with sort of that American ambush style as well. And defensively, he's on point. I don't know how long he'll stay with Ronnie Shields. I hope not too much longer, if I'm honest. But thus far, so good. And in terms of Ados Yosabanuli, he actually, he did very well sort of in the first half of the fight. Yeah, he didn't win many rounds, but he kept Morrell honest throughout the entire sort of first half of that fight. But it was just it became a bit difficult to kind of watch from like round 7, round 8 onwards. It was like there's even if you throw a punch from the gods, you're actually not going to win this at this point, because you don't necessarily even have the big base behind you to to land something super flush. And at this point, you can just tell that Morrell is not going to allow you to take this away from him. So it probably should have been stopped by Tony Weeks several rounds before. The corner should have thrown in the towel several rounds before. Maybe one of the ringside physicians should have stopped it in between rounds. It's just weird, especially someone like Tony Weeks, who is quite quick to jump in on a lot of fights, decided that this is the one he was going to wait and not sort of stop before it should have been. And yeah, it was just it was uncomfortable in those last couple of rounds. The second knockdown was brutal. It was a punch perfect shot by Morrell. And yeah, it was just it was a near punch perfect performance, and he's definitely one of those most dangerous 168 pounders, and it will be keen to see where he goes from here. And hopefully the actual result and the way the fight turned out doesn't do to him what it's done to people like Chris Eubank Sr. and others, whereby someone has been really badly hurt in a fight, and now the other person it's almost like they lose that killer instinct, for lack of a better word. So yeah,
cool. So yeah, I mean, I can concur with pretty much again most of what you say. The mixture of the Cuban style. I know our good friend Maestro was at this fight in Minnesota. It's an interesting story. I've actually been to Minnesota. I went to see Prince's studio and his house on my one trip to Minnesota. I literally went in one day, turned out the airport, and literally said to the cabman, just take me to Prince's house. This was obviously he's passed now, but this was sort of like my pilgrimage to a guy who I greatly admired. But yeah, there's some good footage of some interviews with Ronnie Shields by Maestro on his channel, if you want to go have a listen to that. But David Morrell is somewhat of a phenomenon because, as I said, 2 times a year, not even adequate. And first year he boxed 3 rounds. The first one was a first round knockout. The second one was a 2-round knockout. And then you've got, I think, a unanimous decision for 12. And then you've got fights that last 4, 5, that kind of distance. But everything is a stoppage after that. So he definitely needs to be seeing more action and, calling out some big names. Obviously, there's great interest from his camp in the Caleb Plant versus David Benavidez fight. It would be interesting to see if that would be a fight they would want to take on down the line. There was lots of talk of it. As I said, look on Maestro's channel for that interview about that. But yeah, he's definitely got the skills to pay the bills. And he's a very, very technically astute fighter with a great jab, great head movement, great, ability to slip counter. And then, obviously the fact that he's able to produce a knockout punch in the 12th round shows that he's carrying his power through the fight, albeit the fact that, Eidos was pretty much banged up by about round 8 and was fighting on, steam, gas, whatever it is. He really wasn't in a great state from then on. But yeah, a very precocious talent. Hopefully 23 sees him get into some really good fights, and maybe if they can up his fights per year to 3, that might be interesting. But it's very interesting though to see an 8-0 fighter as a world champion, WBA version, and him being maneuvered around with some interesting partners. So that's about that. The other fight on that bill that I just wanted to briefly talk about was, I think it was what you would consider to be an upset. Brian Mendoza against the oft-known Jason Rosario. This was meant to be Gomez, but then Mendoza comes in late doors. So he's kind of taking the fight on lastminute.com, and he causes the upset. And, he's in a tough fight, but he shows that he's capable of mixing it with Jason Rosario, and he clarts him in the 5th round with a beautiful uppercut. And as you can see, he's folded him properly. I've got some friends and my brother-in-laws who are lovers of the uppercut. And if you want to see a beautiful uppercut, go see that fight, because he proper folds him. So yeah, congratulations to Brian Mendoza. Jason Rosario starts again from scratch.
No, he's retired.
He's retired. Wow. That is a big decision to make. But yeah, we look to see where Brian Mendoza goes next. So that, gentlemen, is, and ladies, if there are any watching, is our review of last week's action. Hopefully you will have agreed with most of what we've seen. If you didn't see any of those fights, we've told you about the ones that were very interested. Let's see if there's anything else that anybody else has mentioned. I think there was something else I did want to quickly mention, but it wasn't appropriate at the time. Someone did mention earlier, Untraceable, about Josh Taylor versus Jack Catterall. The news about the WBC today. Shocking news. Am I right in saying you've heard about this space?
I've saw it in the chat. I didn't see it previously, but pretty much it's the same thing that the WBA done at the start of the year.
So WBC at the moment moving mad. removing fighters from Russia and Belarus from all their rankings. Also, WBC moving mad. Don't know if you saw this story.
Yeah, I saw that.
WBC have awarded retroactively a fourth world title at their WBC convention, with the organization decreeing that the highly controversial drawn verdict given in this first fight with Azuma Nelson on June 28th, 1991 was a miscarriage of justice. Confusingly, the official result still stands, as the sanctioning body has no power to overturn it. I mean, boxing just has a habit of stabbing itself in the back. Literally the worst decision that I have seen in years. What the WBC think they're doing by changing the decision from 1991 and awarding a man a world title on the basis of a miscarriage of justice. It just, the mind boggles. I'm totally confused because obviously there have been hundreds of miscarriages of justice since that fateful day in 1991. I don't even think that miscarriage of justice was that bad. There's been worse.
Luckily, it's not part of the last weekend's boxing action, so I don't have to talk about it. I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just couldn't not mention it because it wasn't mentioned on Monday Night Smoke. But when I saw it, I was like, "What?"
That's because it happened after Monday Night Smoke. That's
okay,
why.
Yeah. I literally, I mean, I guess the boys will talk about it on the pod on Thursday. But you know, boxing is just shooting itself in the foot when it does bullshit like this. It's just awful. It's just awful. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have completed our show. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Down in the ticker tape now, you can find Base's on YouTube, Insta, and Twitter accounts. He's got content coming out through the week. And
also, yeah, I should let you guys know that tomorrow, I haven't decided on the time yet, but in commemoration to the 100th episode of the Hardcore Casual, I will actually be doing a live stream. Haven't figured out the time yet. Probably will be between sort of 7 and 8, and it'll be maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. So I will literally just be in front of the camera. I'll react and talk about whatever stuff I see come up. Interact with me in the chat. I'll answer everything that comes up because I doubt I'm going to get more than maybe 20, 30 people watching if I'm lucky. So I won't have too much to go through. But yes, that's what we're going to do for the 100th. So yeah, tune in if you got any spare time. And if you haven't, no worries, you can catch it on the replay. But thank you very much for the support of myself. Thank you for the support of Tony. Thank you for the support of this channel and this platform. KG, Travis, myself, Tony, October. I don't know where she is tonight, but hopefully that she's obviously mashing work as she normally does. So big ups to the entire team. We want to see KG lift off, and we always want to see Travis J prosper. So with that being said, thank you very much. And that's it from me. Tony, what do you want to say to close off?
Thank you very much, guys. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, go buy your tickets for Too Bold, Too Hilarious, Bloomsbury Fair. We will be there. Great night of entertainment with, as Baser said, Travis and KG, our co-presenters. Guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy yourself, and we will see you next week. Salute.
Peace.